My name is Malia Panglao, and I teach AP Biology. I also teach the Health Science Academy courses. So I teach human body systems, medical interventions, and biomedical innovations. So in biomedical innovations, it's all group collaborative projects. It's all research-based, like they've taken the science that they've learned in human body systems and in medical interventions, and they're applying it to, solve problems in their community. They're learning statistics, how to manipulate data and show, that they've proven something or not proven something. They're applying the scientific method. They're doing all kinds of research, DNA research, environmental research. They do their own open-ended project in there. So one of the units in that course is environmental health. They start out with a community that, like a sample community that's all of the residents are getting sick and they're getting like gastrointestinal issues. And so they look at that case study and then they start to look at issues in their own community. And then from there, they pick a community that they would like to research further. And so in the Project Lead the Way curriculum in that course, they basically like choose a town or choose an area, look at the environmental. There's all kinds of data online with environmental impact studies and, air quality data and all that kind of stuff for pretty much every community. So they start with that. But I decided to just kind of adapt it a little bit to be more relevant to their own culture and their own home. So I had them choose a place either where they go to school, where they live, where they work, or something that's a place that's special to them. And then I break up their groupings by the place that they chose. And so one of their components of that project is to test the water quality of that place. So they're already familiar with the water quality testing because we do just a regular lab where they test water for bacteria, for, different components that can be present in the water, pollutants, other things. It's just kind of like applying that piece to their final project for that unit. So they basically concentrate on testing the water that's in their particular place. So not only the drinking water, but just all the water that they would use to bathe or whatever in the house. Also, if there's like rivers or waterfalls, anything like that flowing through that area, or if it's near the ocean, then they would test the ocean water too, and just kind of come up with a whole report about the water quality component of that particular area. Project Lead the Way, that particular class has 8 units. The last unit is a culminating project where they do like an open-ended project of their choice. The units are centered around like different scenarios, like I was saying. So the environmental health unit is centered around like a family that gets sick because their water is being polluted by the sewage. And so that is kind of the premise for that particular unit. The unit would have them, choose a city or a place like in the US or whatever. It's kind of open-ended, but I have them specifically choose something that's close to them. It can even be on an outer island if they choose, as long as they've, been there and have access to the water, which would be kind of hard actually. So I've never had anybody do that, but they technically could, as long as it's like within the islands and something that they is relevant to them. So that's kind of how I adapted it, is just like making it more relevant, because they don't care about the water quality data or the pollution in New York or something like that unless they're going to school there. But it's more relevant, and they learn a lot more and they get more invested in it if they're doing it in their home community. Well, I want them to learn the content, obviously, and be comfortable with doing all the lab work and be safe throughout the process. That just kind of comes naturally, like when they're doing this. I noticed right away, like with E Ola, they were addressing aloha aina. They were addressing collaboration because it's a group project. They were addressing like global competence, Malama Kuleana being responsible for the place that they live. So that kind of came out in my learner outcomes after the project was over. And they were just more aware of their environment, and they were wanting to test water for everything. They're like, oh, can I bring my grandma's water? Can I bring like this water? The water at the beach was this way. Like they're just noticing a lot more things. So that was kind of a takeaway that I got. Also, I had a sub for like a week. I think I was gone somewhere, and they were bringing in water, and they were competent enough to just test it on their own. They didn't need my guidance. They were totally comfortable with the safety protocols. They could come in and do this independently and do that inquiry part of it. So that was a really good takeaway as well. Just including the Hawaiian cultural component even more, looking at the ʻAʻapueo of the area where they're researching, and just kind of looking at like historical use, you know, how is this area used, maybe just historical data behind it, doing some of that research, because I just had like, basically they went back, I don't know how long, maybe like 50 years. Like a lot of it was like, oh, sugar plantation, or it was pineapple fields. But even, you know, back further than that, maybe even pre-contact, and like, or how the land was divided up, like add that kind of a component into it. And then also I want to expand on the E Ola part and add like innovation, creativity, and problem solving. Like how would they make this community ideal? Like if money wasn't an object, or if, you know, land ownership or whatever, like what would they do to make this community like healthy and safe? And what kinds of things could they add? What would they like to see if they lived there with their family? So those kinds of things is 2 things that I would do. Well, since I teach all upper division science, 11th and 12th grade, advanced science, it's all application. None of it is intro level. So I have to look at my content first and my standards. In the classes that get tested on, I have to make sure, you know, that they're going to be able to do this, you know, recall this content for a test and apply it. So like in AP Biology and in some of the other Project Lead the Way classes, I just have to make sure that that content is included. For BI, for biomedical innovations, they don't have tests, but they have projects and they all build on themselves. So I just have to make sure that the collaborative piece is there, that safety is there. And then once I have all those components, I try to just make it relevant for them. Like I look at what E Ola outcomes it addresses. And then I also look at how I can bring in a Hawaiian cultural component, whether it's a guest speaker, whether it's like reading an article, or just doing something to make it more relevant to them. Because this is, you know, Project Lead the Way curriculum is written in like, I don't even know where, Ohio or something. Like it's not really relevant to them as far as like the places that they talk about, the families that they talk about. Like they talk about nuclear power plants and stuff that we don't have. So I try to bring in just like the issues that would affect these students, and then they can kind of relate that way. So that's usually how I plan for all my lessons. My human body systems class, it was a forensic anthropology unit. So that lab, they have like a skeleton. I have sample skeletons that they find. I simulate it where they went out and discovered a skeleton. Like we start out watching an episode of Bones, and just to get them excited about like forensic anthropology and what does a forensic anthropologist do. When I was planning for that lesson, incorporating EV into it and like what would happen, the skeleton they found was like, you know, a skeleton that maybe was an ancient skeleton, or, you know, some iwi kupuna. And I'm definitely not an expert in that, and Kumu Kapulani is. So I reached out to admin to get permission, because my students were going to be outside walking around and looking for skeletal remains that I had planted. Me and Kumu Dave had planted outside in the parking lot, the Pakikonia parking lot. So I knew I needed permission for that. So I reached out, and she actually reached out to me with the idea about incorporating that part of it. So I brought her in, and she talked to the class just basically about being on the burial council and things they've uncovered and what do they do with the bones and all that kind of stuff, just to bring in that component. That kind of inspired me to just keep reaching out and involving as many people as I can, because I'm definitely not the cultural expert, not even close. So, but I still want to try to incorporate that piece. And it's a challenge because, you know, my classes are advanced, and I have so much content to get through. So I have to start with the content and then bring in the Hawaiian culture to, you know, make it more relevant and help apply it to what my kids are learning. You know, involving as many people as you can in the process, because you never know who's going to reach out and be like, oh, if you need help, or, you know, oh, if you need water samples from Haleakala, whatever, anything like that. You never know who's, you know, somebody to come in and kokua. You never know until you involve others in that process. And it makes it relevant for them. Like I said, like they're like, what's a nuclear power plant? Like I don't, you know, we don't have those here. Do we have those here? Like, no. So, you know, but they know what we do have here, and they know the history, like the land use of this place. Like they grew up seeing sugarcane when they were really small, and like, you know, or they have a, you know, a relative who worked on the plantations, or, you know, that they know that history, that part of it. So I just try to bring in relevance to like every single unit at least once. Like I might not do it every day, but for at least every main unit that I have, I'll try to have some cultural component or something, even if it's an article or if it's a reference to a place, or just because it makes it more meaningful for them and they get more invested in it that way. For example, like with AP Biology, I'm starting with evolution this year, which I don't usually do, but I'm just starting like a brief evolution topics for like 2 weeks. And I'm bringing in the Kumu Lipo just as like another, explanation for what happened when there was nothing. So they have like the Big Bang Theory, they have those common understood theories and everything, but I'm just bringing in that just so that they can, oh, well, what did the Native Hawaiians say about it? This is what they said. So, and then we also have tons of examples of evolution with, native birds and everything. So that's another thing, but finding that relevance wherever you can and just not sacrificing content, but it's going to make it easier for them to retain the information and learn it and apply it if they have something like that they can hold on to. I think just going through Hui Kalailai and the process, it helped me realize that a lot of this stuff I'm doing already, and I felt like, oh, because I'm, I don't speak Hawaiian and or I'm not a cultural practitioner, I'm not a teacher, I don't feel comfortable teaching it, but like anybody can incorporate it like in a respectful way. And all of these kids are Hawaiian and we should be incorporating this wherever we can. And that it's not impossible to do, even in a really content-rich and advanced subjects. So there's a way to add that relevance and to incorporate it. And especially with E Ola fits in nicely with pretty much every single one of my lessons, no matter what it is, even if it's like biochemistry or, statistics, anything we can do. We can, use Hawaiian examples. We can look at Native Hawaiian health statistics. We can look at ecosystems and water cycle. Like there's so much that we can do that's relevant to here. So I think just realizing that and making those connections. And once you start doing it, then you want to try to do it in every lesson because that you see the difference in engagement of the students, and they're not like, oh, why do we have to learn this? Are we ever going to use this ever again? Like they know why. Now I'm trying to incorporate it even more after going through this process and, implementing lessons that include this component and seeing the students just be more motivated, be more engaged, be, wanting to come in and being excited about learning. So there is definitely a difference in incorporating HCVE and E Ola.